Hello, my name is Jayana Pippin.
My name is Jada Castro.
And my name is Anya Coleman.
And we are students from Julia de Burgo's 8th grade class.
In our homeroom, we have been researching and gathering information about healthy and unhealthy relationships.
It is important to learn about these things because it'll help people open up more, and it'll help people that have experienced or might have been in an unhealthy relationship.
A couple of students from our class interviewed a woman named Luna. She talked about her experience in an unhealthy relationship.
We hope this video makes you understand the perspective of someone who has been in an unhealthy relationship, and if you're in an unhealthy relationship, don't think you're alone. You have the power to speak up.
It's one of those things where you don't really you don't notice until you're way further into it than you realize. I wouldn't have ended up in a unhealthy or abusive relationship if I was able to recognize those red flags at first. A lot of just overall behaviors, manipulative behavior. A lot of it comes down to a sense of control and power over someone. That was something I definitely experienced. I definitely experienced unhealthy relationships within other dynamics in my life, specifically within my family, which I think, just like how we were talking about before, how abuse and unhealthy behaviors don't discriminate against gender or race or class or any of that. It doesn't necessarily have to be relationships within a partnership with a boyfriend or girlfriend either. Within families, parents, even platonic friendships. You can have unhealthy behaviors in all of these types of relationships. And the thing about humans is that our brains are wired to continue patterns. So whether or not they're positive or negative in our lives, we're used to doing the same things over and over, and that's actually how our brains are wired. Because of course you're like, oh, well, who would let somebody treat them like that? If you just think about it from a distance, you're like, how could somebody end up in a situation like that with a person who treats them that way? How could that even happen? Enough is enough. You should be able to say no or recognize these red flags. But especially with a lot of the abuse that happens within our relationships, it's not as obvious as you would think. So another thing about relationships and problematic people who are abusers is a common thing they do is they isolate you and they keep you from, this goes back to the power and control that I was talking about, is they do things to keep you from having that voice, and they isolate you from friends, family. They keep it so that there's an imbalance of power there, so they have more power and control over you, and with isolation that comes with it. So for a very long time, I didn't feel like I had anywhere to go or any place to turn where I could talk to. I didn't have any outlets because he had isolated me so severely. And it wasn't until after a certain point where I, hit my limit, if you've heard the saying, the straw that broke the camel's back, that kind of thing. Once I hit that point, then I spoke up and I reached out to somebody, and they helped to, reaffirm, yeah, what you're experiencing, that isn't okay. I certainly remember experiencing a lot of very complicated emotions that were really unexpected, especially after having gotten to the point of I've ended this and I've walked away from it. But because of just the amount of just the level of manipulation and long-term abuse, it changes the way that you think. You start doubting a lot of things, and it can really create a really strange place in your mind that is kind of hard to explain, but having positive people in your life and people who are offering you support really helps you to kind of keep that in check when, I was saying, if you're receiving all of these negative messages from someone who is, there's an imbalance of power, and somebody who has control over you, they're going to do everything they can to maintain that control. And so once you're able to break out of that, it just I don't know, having positive support really was something that was like very significant and helped me to kind of quiet those weird doubts and voices that I was hearing, you know, of oh, well, maybe like, not necessarily was it right for me to leave the situation. I felt pretty confident in that, but just all of the other complicated emotions that come from that, especially if it's like that was such a big part of my life, and then for that to have changed so quickly, it kind of leaves you in a very weird state where you don't really know, like, you're like, well, did I do the right thing? Like, I don't know. What am I supposed to be doing? I was in more than one abusive relationship. So after the first one, like I was talking about with the patterns, our brains are just wired in a way where we seek out the things that we know. It's like, you know, you do things that you're comfortable with, things that you're familiar with. Just as humans, that's what we're wired to do. And with the relationships that I had experienced with my parents growing up, and then the first abusive relationship that I was in, after leaving that, you know, you would think that, oh, there's no way, like, you would never go back to something like that. Sure enough, you know, a year or so later, I met someone else, and they displayed similar behaviors, but not like the red flags, like I said before too. It's not something that's necessarily so obvious, and especially those types of, you know, abusers and problematic people who display these unhealthy relationship behaviors. They know how to act. they know how to act to kind of lure you in, and then once you're in, then that's when, like, the more, you know, obviously unhealthy behaviors start to come out. It's still so heavily stigmatized, and that's one of the things I tried to be really open about, is talking about my experiences with therapy over the years. And I think that it really is such a valuable resource to be able to use for anyone. It's not just for like a certain type of person or people who are going through a certain hard time. Anybody can benefit from it. I mean, everyone goes through difficult times, no matter who you are, like no matter what level of difficulty it is. And just having a dedicated space with a professional who is unbiased, who knows what they're talking about, and can provide just a totally different perspective, as opposed to somebody like a friend or a family member or someone else in your life, somebody who is completely unrelated to all of the rest of your life. It's a really valuable thing, a resource to be able to utilize, just to be able to like work through your stuff, and just to kind of have another person to bounce ideas off of, and just thoughts and things, and they can help you kind of like come to your own realizations about a lot of stuff. I had to threaten a restraining order because he was extremely persistent and definitely crossed a lot of boundaries there. Eventually did get the point, but it was not a clean cut by any means. I did change my phone number at one point, and that was just kind of to put more distance there. It wasn't really out of, I would say, like fear or anything like that. It was just kind of to cut off access. I've definitely have blocked for my past abusive relationships, like all of my social media and like email and stuff. Like I have them blocked on all of those, because allowing access is something that does not interest me, and I have there's nothing that I'm going to gain from allowing them even the opportunity to contact me. You have autonomy, you have a sense of autonomy, you have a sense of like, I have choice and I have a right to choose how I'm living my life and like what I'm doing and like what is happening to me. So within an abusive relationship, there is a power imbalance there, where the abuser is taking away some of that autonomy, and they're taking away that inner sense of like, I have control over myself and my life and my body. It's a tricky one to try and explain, but the concept, I think, it is very big, and it is something that I think we all really experience in a lot of different ways, even on just like a social, like casual level, like you're talking about in class, like even just a way of like, oh, well, like I was just joking, you're being so sensitive, like why are you getting all upset? And it's like it's totally turned around, instead of taking responsibility from like, oh, I apologize, I crossed a boundary for you, and having some personal responsibility and autonomy in that, and instead flipping it around and being like, oh, well, you're being sensitive, it's just a joke, like I'm going to make you feel crazy about it. I am very thankful for the amount of support that I had from friends. I also had a lot of support from teachers that I had gotten close with in high school, and just other therapy. I had a great therapist. Just seeking out other positive resources really helped me to like gain clarity and like an understanding of what I had experienced and what to kind of be aware of so that I didn't fall into the same situation again. I deserve better than this, and I deserve more than this. And while that might seem like common sense to some people, if the messages you've been receiving for such a long time are that you don't deserve better and this is how life is, it's really hard to see that. And some people might not be able to see that until you have outside, like positive influences like friends and teachers or whoever, therapists, come in and like show you that, hey, that's like life doesn't have to be this way, Whether it's something you're experiencing or somebody that is experiencing, is being able to like offer support and like kind of offer like a safe space for them to feel like that they can share, where they're receiving messages from an abuser or a problematic person where they're basically telling them that like they don't have anyone else and they don't have anyone else they can turn to. That's incredibly hard to break out of. And if those are all of the messages you're receiving on a regular basis, then when somebody else comes in and is like, hey, like I'm here for you, like in whatever capacity I can be to support you, that helps people like, feel like they can open up and start talking. And then that's where you can see that change and you can create like a shift in your neural pathway where you can be like, oh, these behaviors aren't normal and aren't okay, and it just helps knowing that also you're not alone. I think it's really great that you guys are doing all of this work trying to like unpack it and like really like process and work through it. It's incredible. And I have so much respect for all of you for doing that.